Trust. It's something we all want to believe in, something we need to believe in to function in this world. And when that trust is broken, especially by someone you considered family, it cuts deeper than any physical wound ever could. I'm sharing this story not for sympathy, but because maybe hearing about my experience will help someone else recognize the warning signs I missed. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you completely trusted, drop a comment and say, betrayed. 27 years. That's how long I'd known Richard. We met when I was just starting out, before any success, before the money, before anyone knew my name. I was working 18-hour days, trying to get my first company off the ground, sleeping on a small couch in our office, showering at the local gym. Richard was the accountant friend of a friend recommended when we finally started generating enough revenue to need proper bookkeeping. I remember our first meeting clearly. While other accountants had come in wearing expensive suits, talking down to us like we were children playing at business, Richard showed up in jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt. He sat with me for hours, patiently explaining financial concepts, helping me understand not just the numbers, but the story they told about our company. He didn't charge us for that first day. Consider it an investment in our future relationship, he said. As the months passed, Richard became more than our accountant. He was the person I called at 2 a.m. when I was panicking about making payroll. The one who sat with me through the dark days when it seemed like everything was falling apart. The one who believed in my vision when most people thought I was delusional. You're going to change the world, he told me once when I was at my lowest point. I've never been more certain of anything. And he was brilliant, an accountant with a mind for numbers that even impressed me. He could look at a spreadsheet for 5 minutes and identify patterns and problems that others would miss after hours of analysis. But more than his intelligence, it was his heart that made me trust him. When I was struggling, he was there. When I failed, he never judged. When others wrote me off, he believed in me. As my businesses grew, it felt natural to bring Richard along. At first, he just handled the accounting, but over time, his role expanded. He became my financial advisor, then chief financial officer for one of my smaller ventures, then someone I consulted on nearly every major business decision. He became more than an advisor, he was family, someone I invited to holiday dinners, someone my children called Uncle Rich, someone I trusted completely, without reservation, and yes, someone I eventually trusted with significant financial decisions. I remember the day my first son was born. Richard was the second person to hold him, right after me. I'll always look out for him, he promised, tears in his eyes. Just like I look out for you. I believed him completely. When that same son was baptized years later, Richard stood as his godfather, promising to provide spiritual guidance and support throughout his life. 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to do more direct charitable work. Not just the foundations and initiatives my companies were involved with, but something more personal. Something that would help children in underserved communities access education, healthcare, and opportunities they might otherwise miss. The inspiration came after a trip to several developing countries. I had seen children with incredible potential being held back simply because they lacked access to basic resources, clean water, adequate nutrition, quality education, reliable healthcare, children who could one day cure diseases or develop clean energy solutions or write symphonies that would move millions if only they had the chance to develop their gifts. I was passionate about it, but I also knew I didn't have the time to manage it personally with everything else on my plate. Running multiple companies, developing new technologies, trying to be present for my family, there were already not enough hours in the day. Richard suggested setting up a dedicated fund. He had contacts, experience with nonprofits, and most importantly, I trusted him. Let me handle it, he said. You focus on running your companies. I'll make sure your money helps those kids. It made perfect sense at the time. I transferred a substantial amount, tens of millions, into accounts he would oversee specifically for these charitable initiatives. For the first 2 years, everything seemed fine. I'd get regular reports about schools being built, medical clinics being funded, scholarship programs being established. There were photos of smiling children, Grateful teachers, new facilities. Richard would show me spreadsheets detailing where every dollar went. The numbers always added up. Everything looked legitimate. When I would ask questions about specific projects, Richard always had immediate, detailed answers. He could tell me how many children were attending a particular school, what medical equipment had been purchased for a specific clinic, which students had received scholarships, and what they were studying. His knowledge seemed comprehensive, his passion for the work authentic. Occasionally, I would make suggestions about new initiatives or regions we might expand into. Richard was always receptive, thoughtful, and quick to implement ideas he thought had merit. When he pushed back on certain proposals, his reasoning seemed sound. Concerns about corruption in a particular region, or about the sustainability of certain projects, or about our ability to properly monitor the use of funds in areas with limited infrastructure. I was proud of the work we were doing, proud of the difference we were making. I would tell other wealthy friends about our initiatives, encouraging them to start similar programs. The key is finding someone you trust completely to manage it. I would say, someone like Richard. Then came a call I never expected. It was from a journalist investigating financial irregularities at several charities. She wanted my comment on certain shell companies that were receiving millions from my charitable fund, companies I'd never heard of, companies it turned out that Richard had created. At first, I wouldn't believe it. There had to be a misunderstanding. This was Richard we were talking about, my friend of nearly 3 decades, the godfather to one of my children. There was no way he would steal from me, and certainly not from programs meant to help children in need. I called him immediately, expecting a simple explanation that would clear everything up. Instead, I got his voicemail. I texted, no response. I sent emails, nothing. By the evening, when he still hadn't responded, a sick feeling started forming in the pit of my stomach. Richard had never been unreachable before. Never. I won't take you through the entire investigation that followed. The forensic accountants, the lawyers, the discoveries that kept getting worse with each passing day, the elaborate network of fake companies, the falsified reports, the photoshopped images, the complete fiction he had created to hide what he was really doing with the money. Some details, though, remain seared into my memory. The moment the forensic accountant showed me that the school in Nigeria we had supposedly built didn't exist, the photos Richard had shown me were of a real school in Ghana, built by an entirely different organization. The discovery that the medical equipment allegedly purchased for clinics in rural India had never been ordered. The realization that the scholarship students whose progress reports I had been reading were completely fictional names, histories, and academic achievements, all created from nothing. The extent of the fraud was breathtaking. Richard hadn't just stolen some of the money or diverted funds from one project to another. Nearly everything was fake. Of the millions transferred to his fund, only a small fraction, perhaps 10%, had gone to actual charitable work. The rest had been systematically siphoned off through a complex web of fake companies, bogus contractors, and inflated expenses. In the end, the truth was undeniable. Richard had been systematically stealing millions, using the pretext of helping children as cover for his theft. Some of the charities in his reports didn't even exist. Some of the schools shown in photographs had never received a dime. He had created an entire alternate reality of charitable work that existed only on paper and in carefully staged photos. When we finally tracked him down, he was living in a newly purchased villa in a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. The property was stunning: 6 bedrooms, a pool overlooking the ocean, marble floors, a staff of 5 to maintain it all. A far cry from the modest home he had lived in back in the States, the home where I had shared countless dinners with him and his family, where my children had played with his. The confrontation over a video call because he refused to return is burned into my memory. He looked different somehow. The warmth I had always associated with him was gone, replaced by a coldness I had never seen before. It was like looking at a stranger wearing the face of someone I had loved. "Why?" I asked him. Just that one word. I needed to understand. His answer haunts me still. No remorse, no shame. Just cold calculation. Because I could, he said. Because you trusted me completely. Because you never questioned anything I showed you. I pressed him further, needing more than that. We were friends. You were family to me. How could you do this? He laughed then, a sound without any humor in it. We were never friends. You were rich, and I saw an opportunity. It's always been about the money. But that couldn't be true. 27 years of friendship. Countless moments of connection. The times he had supported me when there was no financial benefit to him at all. The personal conversations. The shared experiences. What about when I was just starting out? I asked. Before there was any money? What about all those years? A flicker of something regret, maybe? It crossed his face, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Long-term investment, he said flatly. I saw your potential. I tried another angle. The children, I said. How could you steal from children who have nothing? Children who need education, healthcare, basic necessities? For the first time, he looked slightly uncomfortable. They were never real to me, he admitted. Just names and faces on paper, abstract concepts, not real people with real needs. That perhaps was the most chilling part of all his ability to completely disconnect from the human cost of his actions, to reduce suffering children to abstractions that could be exploited for profit. The financial loss was substantial, even for someone with my resources. But that's not what hurt the most, not even close. What cut deepest was the betrayal itself. The realization that someone I had loved like a brother, someone I had trusted without question for almost 3 decades, had been systematically lying to me, had been stealing not just from me, but from children who needed help, had been using my trust as a weapon against me. I've built rockets that go to space. I've created companies that have changed industries. I've faced and overcome countless technical and business challenges that others thought impossible. But nothing prepared me for the pain of this betrayal, for the shock of realizing that my judgment of character, something I had always prided myself on, could be so catastrophically wrong. In the aftermath, I went through all the stages you might expect: denial, anger, depression. I questioned everything. If I could be so wrong about Richard, who else in my life might be deceiving me? Who else might be wearing a mask of loyalty while harboring ulterior motives? The paranoia was corrosive, eating away at my other relationships, making me second-guess every interaction, every motive. I started going through old memories, re-examining them in light of what I now knew. Had Richard ever truly cared about me? Had any of it been real? Or had every moment of our supposed friendship been calculated, a performance designed to gain my trust and eventually my money? I would lie awake at night, replaying conversations from years ago, looking for clues I had missed, signs that should have warned me. The impact on my ability to trust others was immediate and devastating. I became suspicious of everyone: longtime employees, other friends, even family members. Suddenly, everyone was a potential threat. I installed new security systems, changed financial protocols, limited access to sensitive information, created multiple layers of verification for even basic decisions. People who had worked with me for years suddenly found themselves unable to do their jobs because I had restricted their authority so severely. For a while, I pulled back from nearly everyone. I focused entirely on work, on problems I could solve with logic and engineering and science, problems that didn't involve trusting people. I stopped donating to charities altogether. If my money wasn't actually helping, what was the point? The legal battle to recover the stolen funds has been ongoing for years now. We've managed to claw back some of it, funds that hadn't yet been spent, assets that could be seized. But much of it is simply gone, used to fund Richard's lavish lifestyle, or hidden in accounts we haven't been able to trace. The villa where he lives now is legally owned by a series of shell companies that can't be directly linked to him. The country where he resides has shown no interest in cooperating with our legal efforts. One of the hardest parts was explaining to my son Richard's godson what had happened. How do you tell a child that someone they loved and trusted, someone who had been a consistent presence in their life, was not who they appeared to be? That the relationship they thought they had was built on lies? I tried to be honest while still protecting him from the full ugliness of the betrayal, but I could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes. Another casualty of Richard's deception. But eventually, I realized something important. Richard's betrayal wasn't just stealing my money. By allowing it to make me cynical, by allowing it to close my heart, he was stealing something even more valuable: my capacity to trust, to connect, to help others. And I refused to let him take that from me too. The turning point came during a conversation with one of my oldest friends, someone who had known both Richard and me since the beginning. "You know what the real tragedy would be?" he said. "If you let this change who you are, if you let him win by becoming someone who can't trust, who can't give, who can't see the good in people." Those words hit me with the force of revelation. I had been allowing Richard's betrayal to reshape my entire worldview, to fundamentally change how I interacted with everyone around me. In trying to protect myself from ever being hurt like that again, I was cutting myself off from the connections that give life meaning. So I made a decision. I would continue to help others, but I would do it differently. No more delegating my charitable giving. No more trusting others to distribute my resources. I would do it personally, directly, hands-on. I would meet the people I was helping. I would see the results with my own eyes. I would maintain control not because I needed power, but because I needed to ensure the help was actually reaching those who needed it. I started small, with projects I could oversee personally. A scholarship program for students in my local community, where I could meet the recipients, hear their stories, track their progress. A medical clinic in a nearby underserved area, where I could visit regularly, talk to the doctors and nurses, see the patients being helped. Gradually, as these initiatives proved successful, I expanded, always maintaining direct involvement, always verifying that the help was real and reaching those who needed it. There are still nights when I wake up angry, when the hurt feels as fresh as the day I discovered the truth. There are still moments when I catch myself being unnecessarily suspicious of people who have given me no reason to doubt them. The wounds of betrayal don't heal quickly or completely. They leave scars that change how we move through the world. But I've refused to let this experience change who I am at my core. I still believe in helping others. I still believe in trying to use my resources to make a positive difference in the world. I just do it more carefully now, with more direct involvement and oversight. The betrayal hasn't made me stop giving. It's made me more determined to ensure my giving actually helps. I've also come to understand that there's a certain freedom in doing this work directly, in seeing with my own eyes the difference it makes. I've sat with children who are learning to read because of educational programs I've funded. I've talked with parents who can now afford medical care for their children because of clinics I've helped establish. I've watched communities transform because someone cared enough to invest in their future. These experiences have been healing for me, reminding me why I wanted to do this work in the first place. And I've learned something valuable, something I want to share with all of you. Trust is precious, but it shouldn't be blind. Care deeply for others, but maintain appropriate boundaries. Be generous, but be wise about how you express that generosity. True compassion isn't just about giving. It's about making sure what you give creates the positive change you intend. I think about the red flags I missed with Richard. The way he discouraged me from visiting projects personally, always having some reason why the timing wasn't right. The lack of independent verification for his reports. The way he would get defensive when I asked certain questions. In retrospect, the signs were there, but I ignored them because I trusted him completely, because I couldn't imagine he would betray that trust. Share this if you've ever had to find strength after betrayal. Subscribe for more honest conversations about life's hardest moments, and comment below if you've had to rebuild trust after it was broken. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles makes them just a little easier to bear.